34 years old. I lost my father when I was 28 and my mother when I was 31. Two completely different experiences. My parents were divorced as well, so it was a very different trauma for both sides. My father everyone has a day that sticks in their mind too, and my day is March 23rd, which happens to be 2 days after my birthday. My father was diagnosed, with stage 4 adenocarcinoma, which is esophageal cancer, on March 23rd, 2018, after being completely healthy, deemed healthy on his January physical.
Wow.
He died 3 months later.
Holy crap.
4 months later. June 18th. So Father's Day of 2018. In a way, it was very traumatizing to watch him go from this 6 foot, 180-pound man. He was very skinny, by the way.
Yeah.
Very tall and very skinny. So to be there watching him become a shell of who he was, he died at 80 pounds.
Oh my God. Wow.
And we can go into that more. So COVID had happened and everything had started finally opening back up. So I never got to celebrate my 30th birthday. So my 31st birthday was giant and full of life, And so I remember looking at my mother during my birthday brunch and I knew something was off.
Yeah.
I didn't know what, but I knew something was off. And she kept telling me, I kept seeing her grab her chest. I'm like, something's wrong. And so she was only 66 years old. So it just 66 years old, perfectly healthy, walks 5-7 miles a day, is on no medications whatsoever. Just random, super random. On March 23rd, I found her dead on her bathroom floor.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
She had been complaining about the chest pains and I knew something was wrong on my birthday and I was adamant about going to a hospital. And I know y'all are New Yorkers, so I'm going to say this with love. She was a stubborn New York Jew. Okay? I'm a Jew, so I'm fine saying that with the world the way that it is right now. But my mother and father were stubborn New Yorkers. My mom was from Brooklyn. My dad was from Flatbush. So it just, you can't tell a New Yorker what to do. And you can't tell a New York woman what to do.
Yeah, that's fair.
So she was like, well, I'll go to the doctor if I don't feel any better. I made her take aspirin. I'm a former paramedic. I knew something was wrong. And I knew.
Yeah.
But I couldn't make my mother do anything she didn't want to do. And she was like, okay, well, I made a doctor's appointment for March 23rd at 8 a.m. It's right around the corner from your work. I'll come see you and bring you breakfast, right after my doctor's appointment. And so 8 a.m. rolled around. We had this thing. We always message each other. Good morning. Hope you have a great day. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. I was always at work by 6 a.m. and I never heard from her that morning. I was like, whatever. It's weird. One off.
Yeah.
But by 8:30, I didn't hear anything. 9 a.m. I didn't hear anything. By 10 a.m. I was starting to get really hungry and I was like, man, I really want breakfast. And then by 11 a.m. I was like, okay, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I called her phone 172 times.
Holy shit.
Back to back to back to back to back to back. And I could not get in contact with her.
Wow.
My work was also around the corner from where she lived. So I just walked out. I didn't say anything. I just was like, nope, I'm gone. Walking out. And that's when I had a key to her place, of course. That's when I found her. And the neighbor next to her heard my screams.
Wow.
It was like that carnal scream.
And you said you're a paramedic?
Yeah.
And you've seen shit, I would assume.
I have seen a lot.
The contrast, right? To having something so personal.
I've seen plenty. Yeah, plenty of dead bodies. I've brought people back to life. I've watched people take their last breath. plenty of times, but that was my first instinct was that carnal scream. And then I started doing my full assessment was, okay, let me check all of her pulses. Like I knew, like, there's no way. But I knew rigor had already set in. Like, I could tell.
Yeah.
But I still had to do my whole assessment personally.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting down after, I was like, I know that she's dead. Like, in my head, I knew she was dead. And I sat down and I didn't want to touch her for fear of, like, the police being like, okay, this is a crime scene, but it's not a crime scene. So I put my hand over her head and I covered her up because she was naked, by the way, which is typical of my mother. She was always naked. She went to Woodstock. Like, she was just a free, hippie child.
Okay.
She always naked. I covered her up with this giant fluffy blanket. And I remember it because they took her away with it too. So, but I heard a knock on the door and I just was screaming and holding her, and like, the cop came in. It was the cops that showed up first because obviously they just heard a scream.
Yeah.
And they literally had to pull me off of her because they knew, like, I was just screaming. And the cop, he just pulled me off, and he was like, I know, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But I have to let the paramedics come in.
Yeah.
My mom and I were best friends. And it's not to say that my dad and I weren't best friends. My dad's death was a blessing because of the pain that I watched him go through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's death was so unexpected and so sudden and so random.
Yeah.
So I say I'm an adult orphan now just because, and like anytime I see people that have fractured relationships with their parents, it hurts my heart because
Yeah, same.
I don't know what that's like. Everyone says, oh, you don't have childhood trauma. Everyone has some form of childhood trauma, and my childhood trauma was my parents' divorce. So I love my father very differently than I love my mother, but I wasn't there when my dad died. So that's a different type of grief that I had to settle with. And I wasn't there when my mother died, but I was there to witness everything. I didn't see my father's body get taken away. I didn't see my father's body in the casket. I didn't do any, like, it was so different from my mother because the image I had of her from her death, I needed something different. So I asked the funeral home to let me see her before they covered everything. And they did. And so lots of therapy. Let's just say that. Lots and lots and lots of therapy. And thank God for good therapists.
Yeah. This has been 6 years?
So 6 years since my father and 3 since my mother.
3 since your mother died.
Yeah.
Right. So when you think of her, what are the images that you have now? Have you been able to kind of rewire your brain to go to different images first?
Yes, but every so often, and more so than people will tell you, is that I still see it.
Yeah.
And during the most random times too, I could be having the greatest day of my life, and all of a sudden it's just a flash, and it brings you to your knees.
Yeah. Next week, Monday, will be 4 years since I lost my wife. And I was fortunate enough to have family kind of cover her. And then, like, we turned off the cameras in my house and they let me leave when the coroners came. But that image of her last breath. So I've watched, I think, 8 people die. But watching her die was just something else, right? And she's the only person that I ever saw, like, her jaw did this, like, really not human movement.
No.
You know what I mean? And I can't for the life of me ever get that image out of my mind.
Mm-mm.
Ever. I just remember looking and being like, what the fuck was that? And then she was gone. But I have found that like some of the work that I've had to do over the years is not staying in the relationship to my wife where it's the sadness and the loss, and trying to shift it to the memories and the feelings being on the things that were beautiful and joyous. But there is just some reason that we get so trapped in those last moments and in all the pain. It's like our brains like, no, just fixate on that, because that's your new relationship, because it's the last thing that you had with them, as opposed to the years and years and years of joy that we had with our lost one, or our loved ones. And it's such a hard thing to make that shift. Have you experienced that same thing?
Yeah. And my therapist will say, you know, everyone talks about the circle of grief. It's not a circle, because you go through it in different stages, number one, and you go through it every single day. It's not just, okay, well, you made it through your 5th stage of grief. Congratulations. Here's your certificate of completion.
Yeah.
No, I will bargain all the time. Like, there are days where I'm having one of those, I'm like, please, God, just let my mother, like, call me. Like, her phone, like, I turn her phone off. The number is gone. I have voicemails on my phone from her still. I have voicemails from my father on my phone still, just so I can still hear that voice, because I'm lucky enough to have that. So on days when I need them, they're there, but it's my therapist would say, you don't get to choose how you complete your circle of grief, because it's a circle and circles never end. So you are in a continuous loop of your grief no matter what. And some days you'll be better, some days you won't.
Yeah.
Like this year was the third year, and then the 6th year for my father. And I didn't cry. And everyone's like, my husband's looking at me and he's like, you gonna cry today? Are you like, do I need to get you some chocolate? Like, what do we need? Like it's, and I'm like, I don't know. It's super weird. But on a random Tuesday in the middle of summer, I will have a complete breakdown doing nothing.
Yeah.
So the whole ideation behind death days and death anniversaries, they're awful, yes. But I found that they're easier to work through than the random Tuesday in the grocery store when I hear the Red Hot Chili Peppers come on, and I'm like, I could, you know. And so
I think it's like the death days, you expect it, like you're like, well, you would expect that would be the day that kind of takes you back, and you can kind of control it, so you feel just whereas when it kind of comes on out of nowhere, it's just like, what the fuck, like, why? Because you know, like some people have their rituals or don't have any rituals for that day, and so I think it's kind of just like, it's like the one you can control, and you can't control the ones that come out of the blue. So it's a bit more, it's a bit more alarm, like off-putting in a way, because you're like, what the heck? I'm just like listening to a song. Why am I crying? But I kind of have learned to just like, I'm just like, I just cried out, and then I'm like, all right, now I'm done. like there's no shame in crying, you know?
No, I can say, like, I've seen my husband cry 2 times in the 10 years that I've known him. And it was the day that we put my 16-year-old dog down.
That's literally same. Not to laugh about that, but like literally, Nate never cries, and he was a fucking puddle. He'll tell you that. He'll say that himself. He's like, I was a puddle. I couldn't even, like, he's like, I'm sobbing like a child. I was like, because it's fucking sad. Like, a dog is like, and you have to do it. Like, oh God.
Yes. And the day that we viewed my mom's body before they closed the casket, My mom and my husband had a very loving relationship. And it was good to see that, because I don't know that he saw that kind of love from his mother and his childhood.
Yeah.
He'll deny that, but that's okay. But that's my whole thing, is that he got a lot of love, like a love bombs from my mother all the time. Oh, here's a gift. Here's this. Here's that. Here, you need a hug. You need this. You need that. And that's just my mother in general. And so I think to see that relationship gone, and he wasn't there as well. And he was an over-the-road truck driver when this happened. So I didn't celebrate my birthday with him. He wasn't there. He was 18 hours away when I had to call him and say, my mom's dead.
Oh, shit.
And he was like, oh no, shut up. What are you talking about? And I'm like, my mom is dead. I just found her body, Andrew. And he was like, I have to go home. Like, I'm coming home. It's going to take me 18 hours, but I'm coming home.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 days that and so you don't expect to see like this man just break down. And so that also is just really hard to witness.
Yeah.
I wish men showed their emotions more, honestly, or talked about them a little bit more, but
yeah, my soon-to-be husband's also in the military, so
yeah,
that's
former military, former law enforcement. So yeah,
they're like,
he saw a lot of the same things that I saw as a paramedic in the same city. So
they're like conditioned. I mean, they're like conditioned not to, because of what they do, obviously. Right. So it's a very hard thing to like unlearn.
Yeah,
but I think like they find different ways to show them, but they might not always like speak them.
Yeah. And it was the opposite for me. My wife, Ariana wouldn't let me go to her appointments anymore with her oncologist, because she's like, you just cry all the time.
You don't have a problem showing
like,
emotions, CJ, that's for sure. And
zero
not
problems.
not in a bad way. Like you,
no,
it's admirable.
Yes.
Except that my wife wouldn't let me be at the oncology sessions. But yes. So it's the opposite.
Well,
you're just going to cry, CJ. I don't want you there. I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks. But if you knew my wife, like, she very much was the like stoic, I'm centered, I don't feel anything. Yeah. And I'm just a puddle of emotions.
I'm definitely more the stoic, don't feel emotions. So.
Yeah.
I feel all my emotions all the time.
Me too.
My heart is on my sleeve all day, every day.
Same. All the time. I mean, my kids tell me, they're like, you got to stop, Dad. Like, we're at their doctor's appointments doing the physical, and they're just like, is there anything you would like to share with us, Dad? And I just start talking about how proud I am of them, and I start crying, and you just see them like, this fucking guy.
Oh my
Get out of here.
I'm dead. Like, meanwhile, they're like, can we get the fuck out of here? Like, I don't want to be here.
I'm telling you. But I think the loss that we're talking about is like the days, the anniversaries, these things. Like, I think it was a good point that you guys made of, we have control over these. And in grief, we have zero control. We don't have control over the people we lose. We don't have control over the situation. We don't have control over our processing of these things. So yeah, it's interesting to think, because those days where it just hits you like that, they always are harder to cope with. Like, for me, it's a lot of watching TV, and I'll hear certain dialogue. Like, even The Office, like, I'll rewatch The Office and cry at The Office. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why am I crying at this comedy show? But it's like, I see Pam and Jim, and I'm just like reminded of these memories that I had with Ariana, and I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah, but like, in a way, isn't that like beautiful?
It is beautiful.
I cry. I have like I tear up at like a lot of things. Like, even like literally watching the video last night of Damar Hamlin catch the interception, I was like tearing up. I was like, this.
Oh my gosh!
I don't like why. Like, how pathetic, but at the same time, I'm like, this guy like literally died, and now he's so happy to be playing football, and it is like amazing. But
It is.
I will tear up at a lot of things. Like, that's kind of, I don't know if that's because I'm getting older or what, but
No. I think like,
Mm-mm.
well, I mean, going through different life stages that you're going through now.
yes, yeah.
But I do think like what we've talked about on here before is that the amount of grief and pain that we experience is the benefit of that is that container that we build to hold it, right? And that's like what we're learning in therapy and healing and whatever we do to heal is the same container that we can hold joy, love, and abundance and feelings. So I think like it just opens us up more to have these moments of appreciation, the moments of sadness, and the moments of recognition of these human interactions that we experience in the world, right? Like hearing the Red Hot Chili Peppers and having that memory, that sense memory of those that we lost. But I'm curious about, you've mentioned therapy a few times.
Yeah.
Was this something you were doing before?
No.
Your mom? Okay, so this was triggered by the grief.
So
what was that process?
I kept waking up at 1:38 a.m. for weeks. And I would wake up screaming. Like,
Really?
And so in my head, I'm thinking that's probably when she died. And I didn't find her until so many hours later.
Right.
And so I was having heightened anxiety, heightened paranoia, insomnia, like all these different things. And I was like, you know what? I need to get into like a grief counselor. I need to get into grief therapy. I need to find a grief group, something.
Yeah.
And so I went and I did my research and found a therapist who specialized in EMDR therapy as well, and grief and trauma counseling. So I wanted to make sure I found somebody that did that in case I wanted to do the EMDR, which I absolutely did and think was super beneficial to my healing.
Yeah, same.
And I was telling her like all the things that, led up to our life together, what the grief was looking like, how it was affecting my life. I also was working, 16-hour days and food service, food management. So there wasn't a lot of time to just sit and be alone and focus on my grief. I had to focus on running a business as well. So she was like, you know what? You keep waking up at 1:38 a.m. I want you to set your alarm for 1:30 a.m. I want you to wake yourself up before you actually have this nightmare that you are waking yourself up screaming from.
Interesting.
And so she made me do that, and she would for a week. So for a week, I set my alarm for 1:30 a.m. and I would wake up, and she would have me do breathing exercises, and she'd tell me with a journal, and I would journal some things down, how I was feeling when I woke up, and then I would get myself to go back into a restful sleep. And I would do that all the way up until I got to 1:38 a.m. again. And she was, once I hit that mark of being able to sleep past 1:38 a.m., she put me through the EMDR therapy so that I could relive it and hopefully get through it. And this is something that people will always say, well, you lost both of your parents. Why did you go to therapy for your mom and not for your dad? And I hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a shitty question. Like, what? That's literally like saying you'll get married again to CJ, or like, oh, your mom's in a better place. Like, okay, well,
you can have another kid because you lost. Like, it's like one of those, like, I watched my father become this shell of a human being. It wasn't him anymore. When he was this loud, boisterous man, and like when he was dying, he would whisper like super quietly because cancer it makes you just not want to feel anything. You don't want to hear. You don't want just. So when he died, I was like, thank God.
Right.
But also, oh my God.
Yeah.
So she brought that into the scenarios, into my therapy as well. She was like, well, do you feel like you should be having more trauma related to your father's death? And I said, no, fuck no.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that he should have. I wish that he would have had better chances, but they caught it way too late.
Yeah.
He went through radiation for 8 weeks. That almost killed him. He went through chemo. That almost killed him. He had a feeding tube put in. He hated that. It was put in horribly.
Ugh.
And every single time we would feed him, it would just leak stomach acid everywhere. And so he was in pain all the time. For 3-4 months, he was just in constant pain. And he doesn't do pain. Like, love you guys very much, but y'all with pain or colds or anything, it just doesn't work very well. But for him, it was just the biggest, like, I was so happy that I hated that he died on Father's Day, number one, but I was happy that he was finally at peace, not in pain, not suffering, not having to be this shell of a human being. And so going through the EMDR therapy with my therapist, we went through the trauma, really relived everything leading up to my mother's untimely death and me finding her and the cop pulling me off of her. All my friends showing up at my mom's house to kind of comfort me, to make sure I wasn't alone, making sure that I had somebody go home with me to make sure I wasn't alone at home that night. Because my sister and her husband, I have an older sister as well, and it was very traumatic for her as well. But she was there for my father's death. I was there for my mother's death. And so...
Has the relationship with your sister changed since losing the parents?
Yeah.
In a good way, or?
A little bit of both, a little good, a little bad. We handle our grief very differently.
Yeah.
I went through the therapy. I went through everything that I felt I needed to do for my trauma. And I feel like the way that she handled her grief was completely different, and that's totally fine. That's how she handled it. But she kind of like set it all in, bottled it up, and went straight back to work within 5 days. And I couldn't go back to work for a month after that.
Yeah.
My father, I was back at work within 2 weeks, but I couldn't after my mother for a month and my work was just hounding me. We need you back. We need you back. And I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like, no, I'm doing what I need to do. And that's how it led me to y'all.
I know, I was going to say.
Empathy.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so empathy then to this, and so that's how it all came to you guys. And so...
Have you always been a type of person that's going to just be like, this is what I need, this is what I'm going to do, I don't give a shit what anybody says? Like, that's pretty... I don't, like, statistically, I have no idea, but, like, it feels like it's more rare for somebody to be like, you know what? I need a month off. I'm going to fucking take a month off.
That is me 100%. It's I have to be in control of everything around me. And not like my life and shit, but like I'm a big control freak when it comes to like specific things. So not having control of my emotions was very unsettling. And so I couldn't be the strong leader, the strong manager at work if I couldn't even control my own tears. I couldn't be this person that they wanted me to be, because I worked with a bunch of teenagers and, you know, young 20-somethings, and I was in my 30s. And so they're like looking at me like I'm some idol because I'm managing a business with them. And so I couldn't be who I needed to be. I couldn't be who they needed me to be. So there was no way that I was going back. Although my work was like, you should come back. You need to be back. We need you. And it was all for business purposes. And I just was not happy with that. But that's neither here nor there. So the thing that a lot of people don't discuss when it comes to losing somebody so traumatically either is you feel like everyone around you is about to die suddenly, even yourself. So somebody I had some anxiety. I mean, a lot of people will always have anxiety, but my anxiety and depression were heightened, and it still is till this day. And I always feel like that one little ping in my chest. Oh gosh, is that what my mom felt? Oh, I can't swallow my food correctly. Is that what my father felt? Oh no, do I need to, like, so the medical anxiety that happens after both of these traumas is terrifying.
Yes. I have it so bad.
I'm still afraid of the doctor.
Yeah. It was every day, and it's finally starting to get better, but was literally every day, every thought was, oh, I must have cancer. That thing must be cancer. One of the symptoms and progressions of my wife's cancer was a lot of people end up going blind, and she started like having issues with her sight. So I'll go outside, look at like a really bright object because it's sunny out, and then you get the spots in your eyes until your eyes adjust, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going blind. I'll have a panic attack. Like I was playing tennis, and I would like get freaked out because it's like your eyes are trying to adjust so fast, and I would have to stop, and because I'd have panic attacks. But the medical anxiety, like people just don't talk about it enough.
No.
And then the response is always just like, you're fine, you're young, you're healthy, you're okay.
Down.
And I was like, well, cool, but my wife wasn't supposed to have cancer. She had less than 1% chance. And also my son ended up having an extremely rare nerve tumor right after she died. So fuck your statistics. My brain doesn't give a shit about them.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that I'm dying.
Yeah.
It's fucking, and like there's downward effects of that. Like it has affected different areas of my life that I am still trying to heal from. And it just brings like anxiety and shame, and like you want to experience joy and you want to feel better, but you feel so helpless to it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it isn't talked about enough because I went down that rabbit hole and was constantly going to the doctor. I bought all the different pieces of medical equipment. I was like, I'm going to get a blood pressure cuff. I'm going to get a heart rate monitor.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to go get an EKG done. I'm going to get a complete workup. And it's like, you're normal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't feel normal. Something's wrong. I want you to find something so that you can fix it. And in that essence, and nothing's wrong. My own head.
I have like the kind of an opposite of that right now, which is they've like figured out that I have like a 21% chance of getting breast cancer based on some scale.
Mm-hmm.
And they get like every 6 months, it's like MRI month 1, mammogram month 7, plus ultrasound, plus like manual clinical breast exam or whatever. I'm like, bro, I don't even have cancer yet. Like, why is there so much? And they're like, oh, well, it's just being safe. I'm like, I get that, but like, this is like a lot. Like every single time, this is like triggering.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, also, like, why do you need to have like some manual exam? What the fuck's the point of a fucking mammogram? Like, if the mammogram doesn't pick up a bump, like, how are you? How is your hand?
Yeah.
So I just like, I'm almost like, it's not, I know it's not overkill, but like it feels like overkill. And it's like I'm like, and I don't think that every single person in that, like in those environments, like realizes it. Like even when I went to the gyno, there's like, oh, well, we have to. I was like, you're not fucking doing a breast exam. Like, I don't care what you say. So, like, I've had 5 of them. I'm good. I'm great. And if I get cancer, it's my fault. I don't care. Like, I'm going to take my chances. And then it gets into this whole other issue that, like, some people can't even get a mammogram and, like, are getting cancer at stage 4, but you're worried about giving me fucking 55 tests. Like, the MRI and the mammogram are fine. So it's like,
yeah, I mean, we never would have, there's no amount of time that we could have caught Ariana's cancer that it ever would have presented in a mammogram. They even said, like, we never would have found this in a mammogram.
They didn't find my father's until he passed out. And
right.
Like, everything always comes back normal for a lot of people 100% of the time. And it's that one thing, like, you would need a full body MRI every like 2 to 3 months just to check for things. And even then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CJ, was it like an MRI would catch it?
An MRI probably would have. Yeah, because I think that looks at densities and stuff. But like so I'm the opposite of you, Jenna. Like, I used to be at the doctor's, my checkups, my blood work. What do you want me to do? I got it. I feel good. I'm in control. my wife died, that health anxiety is so bad. I'm like, I'm too scared to go to the doctor. I still do, but the fear and the panic is so high that I'm like so afraid of everything. If my phone rings, I'm afraid because every time my wife's phone rang, it was bad news.
Right.
And then doing blood work, like I try to do quarterly blood work with this other company just to like chart my stuff. And because they do more than what the doctors do.
Yeah.
Just that. It's not going to show me anything that's going to kill me.
No.
It's just like your panel, your triglycerides, all that stuff, testosterone. I still panic. Oh my gosh, it's going to show me that I'm dying. Like my B12 was super high, but my vitamins were insane. And I was like, oh, I just have to stop the vitamins. But my brain's like, you probably have cancer. So like it like did the opposite effect of me. And then it also created this distrust in the medical field where
a lot of distrust
like I have such a like intense fear of STIs now that I'm like have to date to the point where my doctor's like, stop getting tested. You have to stop. You're fine. You haven't even had sex with anybody, since the last time you tested. Why are you testing again? But in my mind, I will literally walk out of the blood test, the blood draw, and be like, I should probably go back in and get more blood done to do multiple tests. And I'm like, I think your tests are wrong. I think there is something wrong with me. And like, no. We've done this a long time.
Yeah.
We know how to like do multiple tests to check. So yeah, it just creates this mind fuck in us where everything just becomes pure illogical. But I say all that to say, I had a really good doctor when I lived out in California who was the best bedside manner. And he looked at me during the yearly physical and I was like, should we do blood work? Should we do all these different things? And he was like, why? He's like, if you keep looking, eventually you'll find something that's probably actually inconsequential, but a test might make it seem like it's more than it is. Like we have benign cells and cancer cells all the time. They die out. And he's like, how deep do you want to go? And he's like, how do you feel? How do you feel mentally? How do you feel physically? How's your energy? Have things changed? Those are the signals that you look for. And it was the only doctor that ever put into perspective for me to just be like, okay, yeah, you're right. We could just chill out.
I think that's what happened with my sister. She just went the complete opposite. She's like, I'm not trusting anybody. And then.
But who do you trust then? Right?
Yeah. How do you trust when everything looks fine and your mom is happy and dancing and singing you happy birthday and all this 2 days later she's dead? Like, what?
And do you know like what the cause was?
I do, and it's probably very controversial. Honestly, we know what the time was when 2021 was happening, and so very controversial. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So there's even more kind of tumultuous
that's hard.
Stuff around, which makes it even more traumatic.
Exactly. And what they listed as her cause of death doesn't.
Oh, that's fucking annoying.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you know, in the Jewish religion, we are not supposed to have autopsies done unless it is under circumstances that are deemed to be mysterious.
Oh, I had no idea.
We are supposed to come into the earth and leave the earth as we were. So nothing should be taken, nothing should be done to your body, your body is a temple, and as we get more modernized, we have our piercings and whatnot. But I remember one day, my father's was very straight to the point. We know what killed him, obviously, but in my mother's death, I remember when she got to the morgue, they called me and they had just taken her body, number one. And I'm like sitting there with my sister, her husband, my friends. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do. And this forensic examiner is calling me and they're like, hey, there's a small bruise on your mom's head. We're going to have to do an autopsy. And I said, the fuck you are. Do not fucking touch her.
Yeah.
You're not doing that. You're not touching my mother's body. I refuse. Do not do this. And it's like, well, in this county, in this state, we have the right and authority to do
Wait, wow.
No way.
Even with like religion? Like religion doesn't trump that?
Yes.
That's crazy.
So I got them to avoid the full, like the Y cut autopsy and whatnot. I just allowed them to do the blood work. I allowed them to look at the bruising that was on her head, but I refused to let them do the full. And whenever I saw her body, I lifted her shirt up. I was not, no, like I'm making sure that you didn't touch my mother. So they just based it assuming on the symptoms. So that is what is listed on her death certificate, unfortunately. But I can't change that. And I was in such a state of unrest when they called me, and like anger and shock. Like I screamed when I found her, but I never cried. And I didn't cry for 3 days until I saw her body. Well, 2 days, because I saw her body in 2 days. Dudes have to be in the ground within 48 hours. So it's like bang, 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 bang. We need to get you into the ground real quickly. So you don't have a lot of time to process when you
like
have to
one to the next.
put your So okay, here's the funeral home. Okay, hey, we need to get all of it. We have to notify all the friends and family. We have to, and
that's so much. I mean, we did my wife's in, I think, 14 days. Like, I purposely took time.
Yeah. My father's was 72 hours. And I remember feeling that internal panic. And I'm like, oh my God. And he should have been buried with military honors, but we couldn't get a military honored company to come or a military funeral accompaniment. So that was hard. But my mom, it was very quick because I had just gotten married in 2020, right before COVID hit.
No way.
So the rabbi that married me, I called him immediately and I was just like, hey, my mom died. And he was like, I'm there. I'm canceling everything. I will make sure I'm there for you. So I was lucky in that essence, because had I not been married just a year previously, I would have been calling rabbis during the height of COVID and be like, hey, I need a funeral.
Right.
And they're like, well,
unbelievable.
Everybody and their mom needs a funeral right now. Get in line. And it's like, thank God for that.
So the process of entering therapy and beginning therapy, would you be able to talk a little bit about like what that journey has been like from the start to where you are now, especially as somebody new to therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. So don't be afraid to start it, and don't be afraid to shop around therapists. Number one, find someone that you mesh with, because I went through 4 before I found one that I was like, I feel comfortable opening up to you. And I always thought it would be a male therapist. I just thought I would mesh very well, because I don't know why, but I just thought that would be better for me, was to talk to somebody who wouldn't have those emotions. Like I didn't want to speak to a mother. I don't want to give a mother
Yeah.
So, and in the end, I ended up with a Christian woman who was a mother of, but it was eye-opening to have those types of conversations with her. And she really, I felt at ease with her. And you always want to feel at ease with your therapist. And not every therapy is going to be covered. I was lucky that I had great insurance that covered it. And then when I left my job, I was still going to see her, and it didn't cover it, and I didn't care. I made it work because I knew I had to make it work. And it was just honestly, it was a quick Google search. Number one, what worked with my therapy, or what worked with my insurance at the time. I called around. I saw who had availability as soon as possible, because I knew I needed help immediately. Otherwise, I was afraid I would have needed to be committed, honestly.
Just because of the sense of feeling so out of control,
out of the depths of and my husband had to go back to work. So I was left alone. So he was home for a while. Like, he stayed home with me for a few weeks, but he had to go back to work. Somebody had to be working in our household. So when he left, I was like, I need to find somebody, because my friends understand and they mean well, but they can't help me right now. And I remember talking to one of my friends. I'm like, I need help. Something needs to change. And she sat down with me and she helped me to find a therapist and helped me to unlock all my benefits with the health insurance and make sure that I found somebody that worked with my network and whatnot. And so starting therapy was not easy, because you unload a lot of personal grievances against your family, and you feel like you're talking shit about them behind their back and they're dead. So, and I hated that part of it, because my parents' divorce was very ugly. And my father felt very jilted when my mom filed for divorce. And so there was always this disarray within our family. And my sister was very team dad, and I was always team mom. And so...
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's interesting that she was the one that was there when your dad passed and you were there with your mom.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why our relationship got I don't want to say it got strained, but it definitely changed.
Changed, yeah.
It definitely changed.
Yeah, and I think there's a recognition that we do all grieve differently, and they're I feel it's important to have the, I'll say, respect or the appreciation of how somebody else would grieve. I have found that oftentimes there's maybe some form of projection that happens.
Yep.
Especially from those who aren't experiencing the grief, looking inward towards us, to those that are grieving and saying like, I couldn't do that, or, you should do this, or you should, all the shoulds. Why aren't you doing this? You should do that. And
the guilt.
It's like the guilt and this unintentional and sometimes intentional judgment, where it's like, take a step back. You deal with your own shit. Like, if this makes you uncomfortable, my life situation, recognize that, but don't come to me with your bullshit or the expectation that I'm going to be who I was or somebody you think I should be, right? Like, grief changes us. These intense moments of grief, experiences of grief, I should say, quite literally change who we are. It changes us to the DNA. And
literally.
And I think that's why, like, somatic therapy, EMDR, these therapies that work on the body on that level are so important and so effective, because we do change. Like, I have been completely disconnected from my body. My body is my enemy, right? Like, that's how it has felt through some of these traumatic events, where in my mind, I'm like, it's dying. It's trying to kill me. It's trying to take away the things in my life that I need to hold on to, because all the good things I've lost. So so I think it's interesting to some of the therapies that I've heard other people talk about too, and what's been really effective for me too, it has to do with the body and dealing with the body. But so as you've gone through this therapy, as you have kind of worked on that grief, and I would assume maybe taken some sense of control over your grief, at least that container expanding so you can have those wild swings and it not feel so out of control. What has the relationship with your mom, how has that evolved? Like, she has passed, and I would assume that it has evolved over the past 3 years as you have healed as well. Like, where do you feel it's at now? Are there things you do to remember her, to honor her, to connect back to her, to, commune with her, like whatever those practices that you might have? Like, what have you gone through?
My mom was a world traveler too. She super smart, graduated high school at 16, traveled everywhere, got married super young, divorced that husband because he crashed 2 of her cars, and just got married to my father, met my father while she was a blackjack dealer in Vegas, and took all of his money.
No way.
So, I mean, she never wanted me to be stuck in this little box. Like, she wanted me to experience life. And I remember after she died, I was like, I can't go out there. I can't do anything. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing a fucking thing because it's scary out there.
Yeah.
And going through therapy, and really with my husband too, I've completed different things in my life that are physically and mentally challenging that I never thought I'd be able to do. And what I mean by that is, just recently, my husband and I came back from a 7-day trip to Glacier National Park where we hiked 60 miles in a week and did things that I didn't know my body was even capable of doing.
Wow.
We traveled to different states and done different adventures together. We've experienced things together that I know I can just feel both, not just my mom, but both my parents are just like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for getting out there and not allowing your body just to sit in shame. Feel the guilt. Like, don't feel the guilt anymore. You don't have anything to feel guilty about. You didn't kill me. So go live your life. Go be who you need to be. Stop letting the grief hold you back.
Yeah.
From experiencing the beauty that is our world out there. And so I don't stop myself from taking PTO days to experience new adventures. My husband just recently was like, hey, I'm taking 3 days off in the middle of the week in October. What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'm taking 3 days off with you. What are we going to do? Like, just because you have to live and stop worrying that we're all going to die.
Yeah.
And I want to, the relationship that I have now is I can tell that my mom is like with me, number one, always. I can tell my father is with me always. In different experiences, I can feel them kind of pushing me and trudging me on. My dad would be like, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you did that. You should be more safe. You should be safe. And, just like, why are you putting yourself in the experience? Like, where you could get hurt or die. And my mom's like, fuck yeah, keep going, bitch. Like, like,
oh, yeah.
I love that.
So completely different experiences.
Yeah. It's almost like the experience that I had. It really kind of started once my wife got her terminal diagnosis, but there's so much bullshit in life that just doesn't matter anymore. There's just so many little things that I encountered through the day, and I'm just like, whatever. I don't got fucking time for that. Like, there's things that I want to experience, because when you see death firsthand and experience that grief firsthand, I mean, it's a very common thing. It's almost a fucking meme where it's just like, don't sweat the small stuff and all these other sayings, but you almost can't get there until you experience something so difficult where it's just like, yeah, no, I really don't fucking give a shit anymore. Like, fuck all that shit. But I think what's so amazing about what you just said is you are not only going out and experience things, but you said you are doing things with your body that you didn't do before or think that you could do. And this new therapy that I started, we were talking about how we relate to the world through our body, right? Through our senses, our experiences with other people, being in people's presence, just how we walk through the world. And when you are disconnected from your body, or the story of your body is that its experience has been traumatic, you lose that sense of connection to the world. And for me, this was really eye-opening. Like, it is not something that I connected before and all the fucking therapy that I've done. And it's interesting because you are putting yourself and your body into those situations to reconnect to the world. And I think that's just fucking beautiful and amazing that you've been able to do that.
Because number one, my husband's like too ADD, he can't sit still, so we have to do things all the time. So
That's me too.
I don't just be, when he gets bored, he gets too antsy, and then it just doesn't work out. So I constantly have to make sure that we have things to keep us busy. And when I work from home, it's like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I want to get out. I want to get out. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's do things. And with this, literally just got back 3 weeks ago, I think, from Glacier National Park. And the first day we did 15 and a half miles. And I remember climbing up the side of this mountain and I'm like sitting there, I'm like carrying 20 pounds in a backpack, and he rips the backpack off of me and he's like, I'm taking this. Like, you're not gonna, like, you're gonna make this. Like, keep going. It's gonna be worth it. The reward is going to be worth it. And he wasn't an asshole about it at all. Whereas I've seen like other couples like passing by and they're like, keep going, just fucking get up the mountain. And it's like, no, like, it's not gonna work on me, number one. Don't tell me that. But he was like, think of what the view is going to be like. Think about what you're going to see. Think about the sandwich that you're about to eat whenever you get out there, you know, like.
Yeah.
And to have somebody push me to be better because he knows I can be better. And it's also rewarding in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To have that type of partner. And it's not always that way, of course. Marriages are very up and down no matter who you are. But
of course.
In that moment, I remember being like, my mom would be so proud of me. My dad would be so upset with me. But I'm here and I'm doing it, and I'm doing it because I can now, not because I don't want to, because I able to. My body is allowing me to do the things that I never thought I'd be able to do. And so I still have the anxiety. I still have the depression. It's not something that will ever go away. The guilt from both my parents passing, just why didn't I notice things sooner? I'm a professionally trained paramedic. Like, why didn't I force my mom, grab her by the hair, drag her to the hospital? The guilt, the what if, the what ifs will fucking eat you alive.
Yes.
And I still do it to myself. What if those, I remember what we talked about. It's not the days. It's not the death days. It's not those specific days. It's in the grocery store. And I'm like, well, what if I had just, what if? And that was one of the bigger things that I worked on in therapy as well, was the what if, because there was nothing I could do. I'm not a doctor. I couldn't have opened up my mom's chest. I couldn't have saved my father from his cancer. I couldn't have done anything. So why did I keep blaming myself for both of their deaths? Especially my mom, because I knew something was wrong.
Yeah, that I've had that same experience. It haunts me, or even just like replaying moments where I was just like, why did I do that? Why did I act that way? Like, she was probably in horrific pain. Like the week before, 2 weeks before she ended up dying, she had to go in for her brain radiation. So I wanted to move a TV into our room because I knew that she'd be in bed all the time. Seems good enough, you know, put a TV. We can all stay in there with the kids. And which meant I had to get another TV for the living room. And here I am, like, trying to hang this thing myself. And I was like, can you come help me? And she was trying, and I could just like, and she just was like, I can't do it. I just can't lift it. And I got frustrated. And I look at like little moments like that. I'm like, what the fuck, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like you can't even imagine the pain that she was in, because like, but I didn't. She never told anybody. But with that, I would love to hear one of your favorite memories with your mom, and if you'd want to share as well with your dad before we let you go.
Yeah. My mom and I were very similar. So we butted heads quite frequently. And until I turned 18 years old, which is funny, when I became an official adult, I guess you could say, she took me on a work trip with her to California, and we stayed at the Hotel California, literally the Hotel California, during Super Bowl. And it was the weirdest time because it was freezing cold that weekend in 2008, Super Bowl weekend. And we just stayed on the beach. We both ran into the water, freezing cold. We ran back out, and we go back into our hotel room. It has no heat. It has no air conditioning. It's on the beach. Like, what did we expect? What did we think was going to happen?
Yeah.
And my mom was notorious for renting vehicles that were awesome. So she got the great idea to be like, well, let's just get in the car. We'll warm up in the car. It was a convertible Mustang. And so we're flying down, well, I don't even remember what, like Santa Monica Boulevard, I think it was. Santa Monica Boulevard, just going 100 miles an hour down Santa Monica Boulevard, freezing cold, hair soaking wet, just both soaking wet.
With the top down?
Top down, but with the heat blasting on us, just jamming to the Red Hot Chili Peppers because
no way.
Smoking a joint together. And I was like, we're smoking a joint in California? Like, what are we doing? Like, what, Mom? And she was like, it's legal here, honey. Like, who cares? We're in California. So, and in that moment, our relationship changed.
Oh, wow.
From being this butting heads mom and daughter to becoming best friends. And I was lucky enough to have her for the next 13 years as my best friend.
Wow.
And with my father, I just recently had this experience, this core memory with my father. I don't know if you remember in the malls when they would have like those like cinnamon roasted nuts and they would smell really freaking. Yes. Okay, so anytime my dad would see them in the mall, he would just get this stupid voice and go, oh my God, I gotta eat these nuts. I need to eat these. I'm just like, I'm just this little girl and he's like making fun of these nuts. And I'm like, oh, this is so funny. And my husband and I went to a concert 2 nights ago and they had those roasted pecans. And he goes, ooh, what smells good? Like, I wonder what smells really good. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the nuts. It's these nuts.
That's amazing.
Just this core memory was just like engaged. And I immediately pulled out my phone and told it to my sister. And she was like, oh my God. And it just brought me back to my childhood happiness of being with him and because I didn't have a lot of memory. I have a lot of memories with him, obviously, but I didn't have a lot of time with him being 4 years old when my parents divorced. So the memories I do have with him from my childhood are very limited. So those core like it's just a certain smell brought me back to that specific memory. Every single time we were with him, he always took us to the mall. So we always smelled those roasted pecans. And
that's awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate you coming on and kind of opening up. I think there's a lot of important things said, and I'm grateful that you brought those to light and kind of, it's amazing to see the journey like into therapy and into healing and to where you are now. And it's a long journey. It's a lifelong journey. But yeah, thank you for being on and thank you for sharing your mom with us.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.